In the news today, men who allegedly robbed a man while impersonating police officers apprehended. Talks about the sale of the Irindi private game reserve still not over, and various roads washed away following heavy rainfall. I am Glenora Shipura, and this is NMH at 1, bringing you the latest news and current affairs during the lunch hour. Stay put, we'll be right back with these stories and more. In our latest news, in the incoming days, Trade Minister Lucia Lipumbu is expected to respond in Parliament to questions around the sale of the Irindi private game reserve to the late Mexican billionaire investor Alberto Baleares, as announced by President Hage Geingob in his condolence message. Now, Showendo Kadengure Theripi, PDM Member of Parliament, told Parliament that the workers have been evicted from that farm and are subjected to racist segregation. Now, moving on to our next story, the police in the Erongo region have arrested 3 men who allegedly robbed a man while impersonating police officers at Omaruru on Wednesday. According to Erongo Community Policing Affairs Commander Inspector Ilenisha Pumba, the 3 suspects form part of a bigger group of 5 men who reportedly connected the Omaruru residents. Who reportedly conned the Omaruru residents out of 50,000 Namibian dollars. Now moving on, the Development Bank of Namibia has inaugurated its expanded office in Walvis Bay. The office is expected to serve towns in the Orongo regions as well as some entrepreneurs and enterprises in the Konene region this week. Chairperson of DBN Board of Directors, Cyril Van Zyl, described Erongo as a very important region for economic activity. It holds the port of Walvis Bay, one of the most significant points of entry to Namibia. It's also an important hub for inter-regional trade. Next up, we'll be looking at visual news right after the break. Now, next up, we'll be taking a look at visual news from across the regions. In our first video, Bank of Namibia Governor Johannes Kavahab said the domestic economy is expected to grow around 3% for 2022. He delivered this comment following an adjustment in the repo rate to 4% yesterday. Ohone Tlache was there.
The domestic economy is expected to grow between 3.3 and 3.5% in 2022. Risks to the domestic economic outlook in the medium term remain sudden surges in COVID-19 cases and vaccine hesitancy. Annual average inflation increased to 3.6% in 2021 compared to 2.2% the previous year.
In our next video, the chairperson of the National Council, Honorable Lucas Sinibo Muha, conducted regional visits to the Oshadon-Juba and Kavango East regions in this past week. These visits are part of outreach program activities as set out for the NC's current strategic plan aimed at enhancing public and stakeholder participation in the legislative process. This clip by Enzo Amuelo was taken when the group visited Okakarara.
Sinimbo Lucas Muha are my names. the chairperson of the 6th National Council. We are in Ochozonjuba region, Okakarara in particular. We started with the outreach yesterday, where we have seen the Honorable Governor and the leadership in Chivarongo. Yesterday we were in Kaltfeld, where again we could see the learners, and we are very, very happy to, I'm happy in particular to indicate that my engagement with the learners was more fruitful. And today, like I said, we are in Okakarara, and as part of the courtesy, we paid a visit to the 3 traditional authorities who together came at one place and launched some submissions on the developments of Okakarara in particular and traditional authorities in general. Part of the submissions that they made was that the central government should at least look at the possibility of reviving the Okakarara sport facility. And then I took it upon myself to come and see the Okakarara sport facilities that I used to know those days. Like I indicated earlier, this is the sport facility that was even catering us, those of us who were there for national competitions of athletic. That's before independence. And then when I came here, I still wanted to see the view that I had by then, but coming here, it's something different. It is in a dilapidated stage where it requires some assistance of some sort for it to be revamped. Now, the submission that was made was that we, as central government, should at least do something so that we bring it to the level that this sports facility was during those days.
Thank you so much, Enzo Amwele, for that video contribution. Now, in the next video, the Roads Authority has issued a warning that various roads have been washed away following recent rains. This clip sums up the situation in the Kunene region. Let's have a look.
The Roads Authority has issued a warning that due to heavy rains countrywide, flooding or washaways of some roads are expected. In light of this, motorists are requested to exercise extreme caution when travelling at all times. The public is further requested to take note of the following affected roads in the Kunene region. The Uchap Bridge and some sections of the MR76 between Uys and Korigas were severely damaged. Hence, the section from Uchap River to Korigas has been closed with immediate effect and until further notice. Road users can use alternative routes via Omaruru. The MR126 from Korigas was washed away for about 7 kilometers at the Lang Awesome Pass. Road users should not attempt to cross the Unup and Hoop rivers during this period. The road is only accessible by 4x4. However, extra caution must be exercised even if you have a 4x4. Then the D2612 in the Twyfelfontein area. Flooding in the Abu Huab River has affected this road, cutting off access to Twyfelfontein, and this area is currently inaccessible. Then the Huanup River and the Skelm Rivier were flooded and vehicles cannot pass through at all. The Sesfontein has been cut off completely and cannot be accessed. That section is the MR128. Then, the RA also warned that the DR2628, which is the link between the MR126 and the D2612, is temporarily closed to all traffic. The RA will monitor all these affected roads and will continuously update the public on relevant media platforms and the RA social media page. In the meantime, the RA's maintenance teams are on standby to ensure that damaged roads are repaired where possible and within a reasonable time period. Finally, the RA appeals to all motorists to plan their journeys ahead of time and to find out about any road closures or floods in their intended routes and to report any road damages to the authority should they come across anything.
When we return, we'll be taking a sneak peek inside Namibia's daily print publications. But first, a quick ad break.
We've always had our focus on the future, the authors of our own unorthodox stories.
Because see, we're different. We're reaching for our goals.
Going against the grain and living to tell the tale.
We see our journey differently.
That has brought us to the singular moment of freedom.
Thank you for staying with NMH at 1. Up next, we'll be looking at the local newspapers. Now, the Namibian Sun reports that while the Landless People's Movement condemned ill-behaved members and Tsotsis infiltrating the party due to great divisions, its former elections director, Ziggy Isaacs, hit back to say leadership duo Bernardo Swartboy and Henny Seibeb want to be treated like demigods. Now, on page 3 of the Namibian Sun, it is reported that following the rejection of his claim to the Masubia Traditional Authority throne, former legal drafter in the Justice Minister, Gilbert Muhonga Mutwa, has taken the matter to court, saying he's being denied his birthright to lead the tribe. Now, the Republican reports that even with their best efforts, public schools find it difficult to survive and provide for all needs with the grants it receives from the Education Ministry. The Minister, Anand Kahibondoka, admitted that state grants are not enough and schools are not protected against economic adjustments with continuous price increases. Now, the Republican also reports that the Namibian government says the embassy in Russia is ready to make consular arrangements if Namibian students studying in Ukraine want to return home. The Allgemeine Zeitung reports that the Swakop River yesterday, for the first time in almost 11 years, reached the sea, which triggered a spontaneous mini-holiday. Now, the Allgemeine Zeitung also reports that after children were again turned away from some government schools at the beginning of the school year because they had not paid voluntary contributions to the School Development Fund, the Education Minister, Anand Kahibondoka, took a stand in Parliament. Now, the Namibian reports that the Sports Ministry says that it needs close to 100 million Namibian dollars to refurbish the Independence Stadium in Windhoek. The facility is in disrepair and no longer fit to host football matches and requires extensive renovations. The Namibian also reports that the Environmental Ministry has been forced to pay 2.9 million Namibian dollars since 2019 to compensate farmers who have lost crops due to human-wildlife conflict involving stray elephants. In the New Era, it is reported that several relatively new members of the National Assembly have no assets to their names to declare. Information contained in the 2021 Asset Register for members of the Parliament reveals. In the New Era, it is reported that the Oshakati Town Council has started the implementation of stormwater drainage systems around the local authority, which is prone to seasonal floods. Now, according to Market Watch, the increase in the repo rate by the Bank of Namibia from its historic low level of 3.75% to 4% will lead to an increase in the prime lending rates for local commercial banks from 7.5% to 7.75%. Interesting reads on Thursday such as these. We have more economic news when we come back. Welcome back to NMH at 1. Now we tackle economic news. Banks bleed 13.3 million from scammers. Commercial banks have lost about 13.3 million due to scamming in the past financial year. Bank of Namibia spokesperson Kadembile Dembruka says the heavy losses by commercial banks are due to 32,000 fraudulent cases recorded in the banking sector in the better part of last year. This comes at the back of Apex Bank confirming that the Namibian interbank settlement system recorded transactions worth 1 trillion Namibian dollars in 2021. According to the central bank, the share of single transactions settled in the NISS amounted to 726.4 billion Namibian dollars, while retail transactions amounted to 323.9 billion Namibian dollars. Now, the Mbruka says payment fraud accounted for 0.0012% of the total value transacted using payment instruments such as electronic fund transfers, debit or credit cards, electronic money such as e-wallets and blue wallets, and so forth. He further warned that banks would not call, email or text to ask clients for personal information like your bank account, debit or credit card numbers, or the OTPs, the Namibian reports. Now, in our next story, week-long fuel scarcity hits oil-rich Nigeria. A week-long petrol scarcity is frying nerves in oil-producing Nigeria as gas stations run out of stock, causing long queues of motorists in major cities. Now, the fuel shortage started last week in the commercial city of Lagos and administrative capital Abuja, with few petrol stations selling the product. Now, the state-run Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation blamed the situation on importation of adulterated petrol by four oil marketers into the country. Long lines formed at fuel stations, causing traffic jams in parts of Lagos on Tuesdays as shortages persisted and drivers hunted for petrol. Now, transport fares have gone up in several cities, curtailing services and forcing some residents and workers to walk long distances to their destinations. Now, in our next story, borrowing money more expensive. Now, the increase in the repo rate by the Bank of Namibia from its historic low level of 3.75% to 4% will lead to an increase in the prime lending rates for local commercial banks from 7.50% to 7.75%. Therefore, households will have to pay relatively more on home and vehicle loans. Analysis by Simon Storm indicated the decision to increase the repo rate was taken following a review of the global, regional and domestic economic, as well as financial developments. The Monetary Policy Committee of the Central Bank is of the view that the rate is appropriate to safeguard the one-to-one link between the Namibia dollar and the South African rand. Now we take a look at our economic indicators. The British pound, euro, US dollar and the Chinese yuan went down in value, with the yuan now trading at 2.38 Namibian dollars. The stock market shows consistent listing, with Namibia Breweries Limited still listed at 48. Overall index closed at higher price, currently at 1725.56, while local index maintained its position. Our four commodities all went up, with Brent crude oil increasing by 1.59% in value, while zinc went up 0.6%. We'll be back shortly with the news from across the continent. Welcome back to NMH at 1. We'll be now tackling Africa's news. Now, in our first story, Zimbabwe government suspends majority of its teachers for 3 months. Unions counted the numbers of suspended teachers in Zimbabwe at 135,000 out of the roughly 140,000 employed in public schools after a pay dispute between teachers and the government. Rural Teachers Union of Zimbabwe filed at the High Court challenging the 3-month suspensions after a strike by teachers entered a new week. The education minister suspended the strikers on Thursday, with approximately 90% of teachers in public schools suspended. Some schools are abandoned altogether by pupils and teachers, when in other parts of the country, happy few could go on with their curriculum. Since schools opened for the first term of the new year, many teachers did not report for work. Now moving on to our second story, we are in Tanzania. Tanzania seeks to manufacture own COVID vaccines. Now, Tanzania is looking to set up its own vaccine manufacturing plant as part of its wider plan to tackle COVID and other diseases in the country. President Samia Suluhu Hassan said the country was also aiming to export vaccines to East and Southern African countries. According to a statement from the State House, she said Tanzania was likely to spend nearly $100 million by 2030 to import vaccines, hence the need to set up its own local capacity. Now, the president, who was visiting the European Union Council President Charles Michel in Brussels, said she was submitting a proposal for the support to make the project a success. Now, in our next story, we're in Sudan. Bus crash kills 10 in Sudan. Now, a bus crash on a highway in central Sudan on Wednesday killed at least 10 people and left dozens injured. Authorities said the accident involved 2 buses and took place in the district of Bara in North Kordofan state. The accident was likely to have been caused by speeding, which led to collision, causing one of the buses to overturn. Now, Sudan has long suffered from a poorly maintained road network and infrastructure, which, according to the United Nations, is due to worsening economic crisis. In our next story, now we're going to go for a quick break. Thank you for staying with NMH at 1. Next up, we tackle international news. Qatar Airways demands visas on top of face masks, but now only for Africans. Qatar Airways is flying passengers out of South Africa again after an extended Omicron ban, but is demanding that passengers from African countries wear a provided clear plastic visor as well as the more common face shield for reasons that are not entirely clear. Qatar Airways lists 3 countries for which the mask and the visor rule holds: South Africa, Mozambique, and Zambia. It does not say why, but it makes it clear that visors are required for the entire duration of the flight. Now, Qatar's Ministry of Public Health currently has South Africa on its green list of countries. Mozambique and Zambia are also on the green list. Qatar Airways did not respond to a request for comment. Now, in our next story, we're in Russia. Russia deploys 77,000 more soldiers to Ukraine border, U.S. officials say. Now, Russia has deployed around 7,000 more soldiers to the border with Ukraine, as senior U.S. officials said Thursday, according to multiple news outlets, a report that comes just a day after Moscow claimed it was reducing its troops. Now, the Biden administration had warned last week that a full-scale Russian invasion of its neighbor could begin as early as this past Wednesday, a date that Russia marked with its purported withdrawal of some forces. Now, Russia has now stationed more than 150,000 troops along the border with Ukraine. In 2014, Moscow seized part of the country, Crimea, after Ukrainian President Viktor Yanukovych fled to Russia in the face of mass protest. Now, in our next story, Japan set to announce easing of strict border measures. Japan is set to announce that it will ease border controls put in place to counter the spread of the coronavirus. About 150,000 foreign students have been kept out of the country, along with workers desperately needed by an aging nation with a shrinking population, prompting warnings of labor shortages and damages to Japan's international reputation. Now, Japan briefly eased its border rules, which have effectively kept the nation closed to non-residents for 2 years, late in 2021, but tightened them again just weeks later as the Omicron variant emerged overseas. Among the measures set to be announced will be raising the number of people allowed to enter Japan to 5,000 a day to the current 3,500, according to the media reports. Now, Japan designates 82 nations as high risk and requires 3 or 6 days of mandatory hotel quarantine as part of the week of isolation for many. Next up, we'll be looking at local news. Do stay with us right after the break. Thank you for staying with NMH at 1. Next up, we'll be tackling local sports news. Now, former Brave Warriors #1 Maximilian Baeva says he will continue passing on his skills to his colleagues at his South African club, Golden Arrows, teammates after remaining in the club's books even when he hardly features for them. The goalkeeper further expressed gratitude towards the club for keeping him and using his experience for the development of other young goalkeepers. Now, in our next story, middleweight Namibia's boxer Lucas Ndafuluma has refused to press the panic button even when he is yet to hear about his next fight. The boxer, who lost his last fight last year, is eager to brush off that defeat and begin his year with a bang. Now, Ndafuluma continues working hard in the gym in anticipation of a fight that can come anytime soon. Now, 29.1 million Namibian dollars. Namibian international Peter Shaulili is rated the most valuable player in South Africa's Premier Soccer League, according to Kickoff magazine, which yesterday announced a combined list of league's most valuable 11 players. Shaulili's teammate at Sundowns, Themba Tswane, is rated second at 2.57 million. Now, moving on to international sports news, Firmino and Salah come through to save Liverpool from a tie. These and other stories when we come back. Welcome back to NMH. Aloy all had their contracts terminated by the club after friendly negotiations, Gunsao said in a statement posted on social media. In our next story, Lachlan Henderson named new Cricket Australia chairman. Western Australia becomes the 4th CA chairman in 4 years, taking over from interim chair Richard Freudenstein following the resignations of David Pevier and L. Eddings. Cricket Australia has appointed Dr. Lachlan Henderson as the new chairman of the board to take over permanently from interim chair Richard Freudenstein. Next up, we'll be looking at the weather. We are walking on sunshine in the north of Namibia as warmer temperature is predicted for northern and central parts of the country. Aranos and Adamsvlei are predicted to be the warmest parts in the country, with maximum temperatures of 36 degrees, while maximum of 24 degrees is expected in the coast. Now do stay tuned for highlights right after the break.
Have you received a loan from NSFAF? NSFAF loan is the same as any other loan. It must be paid and settled. NSFAF has a set of guidelines on how you can repay your loan and become debt-free. Therefore, it is important that you, a former beneficiary and a responsible Namibian, show your patriotism by helping pay back your loan and thus helping NSFAF become a revolving fund for the benefit of future potential students. By failing to pay back your NSFAF loan, you risk being blacklisted or having a court order against you. So arrange with the fund to pay back your loan today. For more information on how you can repay your loan, visit our website at www.nasfaf.na or visit our Facebook page or Twitter. Do the right thing and hashtag #paybackthemoney.
Welcome back to NMH at 1. Now, if you're just joining us, here are the highlights. In the coming days, Trade Minister Lucia Lipumbu is expected to respond in Parliament to questions around the sale of the Irindi private game reserve to the late Mexican billionaire investor Alberto Baileres, as announced by President Hage Geingob in his condolence message. Now, unions counted the numbers of suspended teachers in Zimbabwe at 135,000 out of the roughly 140,000 employed in public schools after a pay dispute between teachers and the government. Rural Teachers Union of Zimbabwe filed at the High Court challenging the 3-month suspension. Qatar Airways is flying passengers out of South Africa again after an extended Omicron ban, but is demanding that passengers from African countries wear a provided clear plastic visor as well as the more common face shield for reasons that are not entirely clear. Former Brave Warriors #1 Maximilian Baeva says he will continue passing on his skills to his colleagues at his South African club Golden Arrows. Now, Liverpool took a firm grip on their Champions League with a tie with Inter Milan as late goals from Roberto Firmino and Mohamed Salah earned them a 2-0 victory. Bank of Namibia spokesperson Kadembre Dembruka says the heavy losses amounting to 13.3 million Namibian dollars by commercial banks are due to 32,000 fraudulent cases recorded in the banking sector in the better part of last year. Now, those were your highlights, and you can catch us at the same time tomorrow. I am Glenora Shipura, and I'll look forward to taking you through the latest news and current affairs in Namibia and Africa and beyond, right here on NMH at 1.
Good afternoon, viewers. Welcome back to another edition of the Regional Review. My name is Enzo Amwela, the correspondent for Namibia Media Holdings in the Central North. Today is Random Act of Kindness Day. Please do be kind and always act kind. Welcome back, viewers, from our daily ad. First up in our news, the Otjiwarongo residents have raised concerns over the number of potholes in the town that causes accidents and damaged vehicles. The residents also raised concerns of poor service delivery at the municipality. They raised concerns such as they pay hefty amounts to get proper services, but nothing is being done. And we also, Namibian Sun, or rather Regional Review, tried to get hold of the CEO, and unfortunately we cannot get hold of the CEO to get answers as to when these roads will be fixed. And due to good rainfalls that were passing by through the past 2 weeks, the potholes actually have gotten very worse, and drivers are struggling to get through their day. And some of them flocked to Facebook to react, and some of them said that most of these potholes are at schools and they may cause one of the children to be ran down. Well, we do hope that the municipality of Otjiwarongo do something about the extreme potholes in the town. Next up in our news, we head over to our Tsumeb Mayor, Mateus Hangula. He shares with us some of the accomplishments, some of the plans and accomplishments he has, pardon me, and he also shares with us that some of the developmental projects have already kicked off, such as the maintenance of the sewage around the town, and he also mentioned that the cultural village is being renovated. Please watch the following.
Yes, very good morning. I'm Matthew Angula, the mayor of Tsumeb. I'm particular honor to have you this morning in Tsumeb as a journalist representing Namibia Media event. Yes, Tsumeb town, like any other town in this country, have been facing so many numerous challenges, more especially that were brought about by this pandemic, COVID-19. But despite those challenges, as a town, we are focused, and we have identified some of the projects that are ongoing. Currently, we are upgrading the President's Avenue Road to a bitumen standard. As we are speaking, the work is already ongoing, and probably by end of March, that road will be open for pedestrians and also the car to drive on that new upgraded road. The other important project that that's also underway, we are also upgrading the sewage plant, because as we all know that this sewage plant was designed to cater a very minimum number of people, but now, as we all know, the Tsumeb is growing, and also urbanization is also one of the forces that is attracting people to come and search for job opportunity and also other opportunity. Henceforth, Tsumeb happen to be one of the entry points from the north when people are going to the south. And we are now currently upgrading that sewage pond so that at least it can accommodate a great number of the residents. The tender was already awarded as we are speaking. The constructing company is already on site, and we are hopefully probably by end of May, they will be able to conclude this journey. The other project that we are also running, we are also upgrading the cultural village. It's a very important heritage that is named after the wife of our founder president, L.V. Kondobolo Bingana, a cultural village. We are now busy reconstructing some of the houses, traditional houses, and I believe Tsumeb is also one of the few towns in the whole Namibia that is still preserving our culture, as our culture is our heritage. Henceforth, we want to also to teach our children and also the generation that will be taking over, so that they know where we come from as in terms of culture.
Well, the mayor is indeed very, very confident that the residents of Tsumeb will receive service delivery at maximum quality. Next up in our news, the chairperson of the National Council, Lucas Sinimbo, conducted regional visits in Otjanjuba region and Kavango East from the 14th of February to the 27th. The regional visits by the office of the chairperson is part of the outreach program activities set out in the National Council of 2017 and 2018 to 2021 to 2022. Strategic plan aims to enhance public and key stakeholder participation in the legislative process.
Sinimbo Lucas Muha are my names, the chairperson of the 6th National Council. We are in Otjanjuba region, Okakarara in particular. We started with the outreach yesterday, where we have seen the Honorable Governor and the leadership in Chivarongo. Yesterday we were in Kaltfeld, where again we could see the learners, and we are very, very happy to, I'm happy in particular to indicate that my engagement with the learners was more fruitful. And today, like I said, we are in Okakarara, and as part of the courtesy, we paid a visit to the 3 traditional authorities who together came at one place and launched some submissions on the developments of Okakarara in particular, and traditional authorities in general. Part of the submissions that they made was that the central government should at least look at the possibility of reviving the Okakarara sport facility. And then I took it upon myself to come and see the Okakarara sport facilities that I used to know those days. Like I indicated earlier, this is the sport facility that was even catering us, those of us who were there for national competitions of athletic. That's before independence. And then when I came here, I still wanted to see the view that I had by then, but coming here, it's something different. It is in a dilapidated stage where it requires some assistance of some sort for it to be revamped. Now, the submission that was made was that we, as central government, should at least do something so that we bring it to the level that this sports facility was during those days.
But well, it is indeed a privilege to see government officials on the ground getting knowledge of what is happening and visiting facilities. Next up in our news, an accident occurred on the B1 road 20 kilometers outside of Otjiwarongo on your way to Okanja over the weekend. It is alleged that a VW sedan Jetta collided head-on with another VW vehicle, and six occupants in the vehicles succumbed to their injuries. Well, viewers, we've come to the end of our news segment. Right now, we head over to an interview with Christo Groenewald, who's one of the directors of Rubicon Security Group. He shares with us how Rubicon started and how it's doing now.
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Christo Groenewald. I'm one of the owners of Rubicon. So Rubicon started as a business in 1997, on the 1st of February 1997. And that was after the old Tsumeb Corporation Limited mine decided to ring-fence its operations, the security operations, into a private business. So Rubicon, the employees of Rubicon at that time, they worked for TCL, and then at that time when Rubicon was created, all those employees were then engaged by Rubicon itself. So being a security company that commenced its operations while it conducted service to the mining industry, our experience as such is also that we are very exposed to mine security. And but also, as we have developed over the years, we have also engaged into retail security and all other kinds of security services that you normally found that a security company would do. During the years, we have also added to our package services like two-way communication, because we do two-way communication within the company by means of radios. Also fire protection services, because we protect people and assets in terms of our service delivery. So we have started to create other businesses, such as Rubicon Radio Services, which is a dedicated service for two-way communication. Our clients in that field is, for example, contracting companies, also mining companies. As far as fire is concerned, we've also created this business, Rubicon Fire Services. We also render this service all over the country. That is now the sale of firefighting equipment, training in firefighting equipment. Also related to that is first aid training. Then we also have our own clothing factory where we've manufactured our own uniforms. Now that business has also expanded to such an extent that we have now created a business initially called Rubicon Workwear, but it's now called Rhino Workwear, where we manufacture workwear, schoolwear, sportswear to the whole of Namibia. So that is a business which creates a lot of employment opportunities, especially for women and more breadwinner females. Even incapacitated persons in wheelchairs can also work in the factory. So we are very proud of that business of us. Now, being also a 24-hour operation, there was a demand for passenger transport from the mines in the area, especially the mines. So we have also then started to purchase passenger buses. So we are also transporting the employees of the shift workers of the mines in the area. Not only in this area, but we've also expanded to the coastal areas and in Windhoek. So anybody wanting to use our passenger transport services can also engage with us, and as such we have established. I would also like to just mention the few challenges that we have, more specifically in the field of security. Rubicon is one of the bigger players in the industry. We have now reached our 24 years of age milestone. But our service structure is such that it seems as if it is maybe expensive to use our service. But together with providing the service comes a lot of backup support in the form of trained personnel, equipment, security equipment, vehicles, additional supervisors to ensure that the service is rendered properly, and all of that comes at a cost. Compared to those security service providers that is coming into the field lately, they undercut the rates, they don't pay salaries according to legislation. But those are the guys that's receiving the contracts. So that is a bit of an unfair practice in the country. The level playing field is not level. One of the challenges that we do have. So, but other than that, I think we are happy that we still live in a country where we do not have this very serious crime. The crime that we do have, we can deal with to a certain extent, from which point the Namibian police would take over any crime activity. So, yeah, we are looking forward also to grow the business even further and hope that the next 25 years will be as good as